I have fought my way back several times from things that I should have died, and I didn't. And it's just given me this mentality of when I face an issue, a crisis or something, am I dead? Nope, I'm halfway through the problem.
Mm,
Am I injured? Nope, I'm three-quarters of the way through the problem. If that's my ultimate goal, my goal is to live. If I've come out of it alive, I'm way ahead.
Welcome to This Helps, where we sit down with the world's leading helpers to find out how they're helping and also what helps them. By the end of this episode, you'll have practical tools to improve your own mental health. I'm Marlon Morgan, founder and CEO of Wellness Together, an organization dedicated to improving the mental health of thousands of people every day. Join me and my insightful Gen Z co-host Hannah Ravitch as we sit down for authentic and vulnerable conversations with people dedicated to helping others. What helps? Let's find out.
We are so excited for you all to hear our conversation today. Marlon, what can our listeners expect to hear?
Thing you need to know about Graham, the guy has some pretty interesting stories, and they happen throughout his life. So we're going to hear about how he grew up on like 5 different continents. I don't want to spoil it, but there are a couple near-death experiences that you're going to hear about. And you're also going to hear about how some really actual, genuinely tragic things happened that forced Graham to take a look at what he's doing and how he can use those experiences to help other people.
I can't wait.
Graham, welcome to This Helps. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you, Marlon. I am too.
So we were just talking a second ago, and you talk about hard things every day and kind of let us know that we can talk about anything we want, essentially. Is that where we're headed?
Yeah, absolutely. These are tough topics, and I think being honest and authentic on the journey and the feelings is really important. Communicating, sharing with other people that go through the similar stuff, or how to help people they see they're going through similar stuff.
I agree. And we're hoping that anyone who is going through a tough time or hears something that sort of reminds them or kind of makes them feel seen or heard, that they can also learn from how you continue to manage that and keep yourself healthy. Graham, you have founded an organization, a nonprofit called Being Well California, and you have done so much over the past, I don't know, what was that, 2019 when you started?
Yeah, that's when we actually started the nonprofit, and the work started just about 10 years ago.
I would love for you to take us back even to you growing up and sort of your entire journey and what led you to this point. It's all so interesting. I think I haven't ever talked to anyone who has lived in as many places as you. And every time I bring something up, you know something about it. And so, just how did that happen?
It's tempting to do that. In the beginning was the word. I don't know how far back I want to go.
Those Genesis fans out there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
good.
no, my father was a really smart guy. He won the King George III scholarship. So for the Americans, that was the king that the Revolutionary War was fought against. And um, every year they have this scholarship. So my dad won it. He could go to any university in the United States, full boat.
That's incredible. I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah. So he hemmed and hawed, and he was tossing it up, and he wound up choosing Columbia University
Hmm.
primarily because he says, I'm a city boy. I'm from the West End of London. Don't stick me out in the middle of Iowa. I want to be in New York. So he went to Columbia University, and when he was done there, he went up the road to another one a lot of people have heard of and got a second degree at Harvard.
Okay.
And that really helped him when he went back to the UK, get a job with the United Nations.
Yeah, that's a real
Mhm.
powerful combination there on a resume, I would say.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
And so he got a posting with the United Nations, and the first posting was Iran.
Mm. When was this? What sort of decade was this in?
This was in 1960.
Wow. Okay.
time of the Shah.
Hmm.
And so he was there, and he had been courting my mother, and he knew he had this overseas posting coming, and he said, "Let's get married. We got to get married because I'm going overseas."
Okay. Little bit of a time frame, a rush there
Yeah,
to
yeah,
make that decision. Okay.
yeah. And it's fun. You think of someone who I always say my dad had a towering intellect, but he was a little bit of a wild man himself. He was in a motorcycle club, and that's where he met my mother.
Okay. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, carousing around these
Yeah.
motorcycles. So
Yeah.
off he goes, and off he goes to Iran, and that's where I was born. And shortly, I think within like 2 or 3 days of my birth, my grandmother got very ill. And so
Mm.
they sent out the alarm, come home, everybody come home. So my dad left and took my mother with him.
Back to London.
Yes.
Okay.
And at 6 weeks, they put me on a plane and flew me from Abadan, Iran to London. And that's what started my traveling.
Yeah.
Mm.
So
So
you had already been more places than most people.
So my father's postings took us to a lot of different places. And my sister Julie was born in London,
Hmm.
and my sister Tracy was born in Ghana. My brother was born in Nigeria, and my little sister was born in Boston.
Wow.
So she's the Yank in the house.
Yeah. The only one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we didn't stop there. We kept going, and so my father, we lived in Vancouver, British Columbia.
Hmm.
And then from there, it was kind of chilly. So we moved to Australia and lived in Sydney.
Yeah,
And
of course, as one does.
one next step,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And from Sydney, we went to Canberra. And then my father never wanted to settle down, started writing to friends and saying, well, I don't know if you've ever been to Canberra, but back in the 70s,
No, I have not.
it is unique in that it was a purpose-built city. There was really nothing there. And they rolled out a map and said, that's where we're going to put our capital. So they had an international competition won by an American named Burley Griffith to design the whole city.
I well, I mean, with everything you've said, this is incredible, but I don't think there's anything more impressive than being named Burley Griffith.
Isn't that a cool
That
name?
I honestly, that's the first time I've wanted to change my name in my entire history.
Yeah.
So Burley Griffith wins this huge contract
Yeah,
award for
honor. He
design.
designs Canberra, Australia.
Wow.
And
Incredible.
so, and so all this is me seeing people making differences in the world, right?
Yeah. Maybe not everyone would see that, but that's what you got out of this.
Yeah, yeah. I went to a school. I had the privilege of going to some pretty high-end private schools through all these
Mhm.
travels, and the expectation wasn't that you would do well. It was how are you going to change the world for the better?
Mm.
And that
Mm.
started in elementary school. How are you going to make the world better?
Hmm.
And that really took root in me, and we continued traveling. And my father actually wound up writing to his friends from Colombia and saying, "Well, I'm thinking of moving. What are you guys doing?" And a guy from Orinda wrote back and said, "Move up to Northern California." And that's what we did.
What did your dad do for the United Nations?
He worked for one called a division called the International Labor Organization,
Hmm.
the ILO. At the time, I mean, a big part of what my dad was doing was was going to former British colonies that had gained their independence and helping them understand how to put in infrastructure, how to keep their hospitals staffed and running, how to
Mm.
keep their electrical grid staffed and managed. And so
Mm.
he didn't need to know anything about electricity or hospitals. He just had to know how to put them together so that the administration was there. So that
Hmm.
when the colonial government left, it wouldn't collapse.
Wow. What an important job. That's a lot of pressure. And it translates to probably the biggest question I've ever heard anyone consider in elementary school, which is how am I going to change the world? So back to that, uh, what were some of your ideas back then?
Well, my dad had put this thought in my head, and I only as an adult realized how impetuous it was to say, but I would say, I want to be Pope. I want to be God's
Oh.
right-hand man on the earth. And then
Oh,
I would turn around and ask the adult who would ask me, and what do you want to do with your life? Right. So,
that's a real power move, Graham.
yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, the first thing I have to do is convert. I'm not Catholic, but
Right.
I
Better get busy. Yeah, you got to get
better
started
get busy.
early.
But it was my, it was ingrained, aim high,
Hmm.
like being God's right hand man on earth. And then whatever you accomplish under that is just is the best you could do. And
Mm.
so as far as I looked at for changing, what can I do for good was, are my activities not only not hurting someone else,
Mm.
but are they putting someone in a place where that they can help?
Yeah, helping them help
Yeah,
and having a legacy and sort of being able to be part of something bigger, create something bigger around you, it sounds like.
yeah. And being a force multiplier.
Yeah, that's a did that word I'm only just new to that as part of how corporate speak, kind of has taken that on. Was that a thing 20, 30 years ago?
I don't know that it was, but it was, again, from my childhood and my education, is that you can't go out and put a well in every town, in every
Mhm.
village in Africa.
Mhm.
You can help somebody who can get the finance for it. You can help someone who can do the actual hardware,
Mm.
and so it was, instead of trying to focus on putting a well in every village, focus on two or three people that can put wells in every village, and that's where you're helping.
Yeah. That
So
makes sense. Yeah, that I think describes it perfectly. So, you have even more impact than you would have if you just tried to solve a problem on your own. So you're getting
exactly.
and to kind of like your dad was doing, getting people to work together to serve the community. It sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So you didn't end up becoming spoiler for anyone who didn't read the show notes. Graham is not Pope.
No.
I think just the origin story and how much you've wanted this since you were a kid. I think it might get you on the top of the list. So we'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
put in a good word for you with all the people I don't know
Yeah.
there. So
First Presbyterian Pope. Good.
oh wow. Well, are we in high school now? Are we about to hear about where you went to college or
So yeah, so we wound up here, and I mentioned my previous educational experience. It was really shocking to get put into the American educational system. I came in, and they tested me, and I was supposed to go, age-wise, I was supposed to go into sixth grade, and or actually fifth grade. They said, age-wise, you should be going into fifth grade. And they said, but you're testing high school freshmen. So
Wow.
was this a private school?
no, this is just regular school here. And so they said, so you're gonna skip fifth grade, you're gonna do a month in sixth grade, and then you're gonna go into middle school. Okay.
So you were young going into middle school.
Yeah. And I had it, my birthday timed out. I was usually about 2 years younger than most of the people around me.
Did you find that the age difference was difficult for you in middle school? That to me feels like such an important transitional time. So how was that experience for you?
It was very difficult. Middle school was not a happy time in my life.
Mm.
Mm.
We had come here, and it's funny how an event can kind of set a course. And I
Mm.
was this little sunburnt kid from Australia,
Mm.
and I had blonde hair back then. I know it's
Mhm.
not blonde anymore, but and the prettiest girl in school had a crush on me and gave me a great big kiss on the lips right in front of the school.
Oh no. That's
And
you're a marked man now.
marked man, marked man, and I got thumped on a lot. And
Mm.
we talk about bullying now, but then it was grit, it was rigor, it was
Yeah.
I
The most rigorous thing that you noticed from American schools was not the curriculum, but it was the level of bullying
yes,
taking place.
yes. It was, we were not working together. There was not a common goal for all the
Mm.
students there. And
Mhm.
I had gone to boys' school, so girls was a whole new thing for me.
Mhm.
So I didn't know what to do or say on that, half the population of the school. But yeah, tremendous amount of bullying, no real support from the school on
Mm,
that. And seeing other people who were bullied and then tried to stand up and what happened to them
mm.
kind of was a real valuable lesson for me. Education wise, I already done all this curriculum. So I was bored. And what that did is that set me on a bad track because I didn't need to study. I already knew all this stuff.
So you tried to find something else to do.
Yeah, I was a hustler. I used to buy candy and then come sell it at school at 100% markup. You know,
Great. Great. Yeah, you have a kind of a captive audience, and you can really push up that demand.
yeah, but it stopped me getting bullied by being the vendor, right?
Oh, nice.
Mm.
Yeah,
Nice.
I was
You
figuring a
became
way.
everybody's favorite person now because
Mhm.
you had that. Well, that's a good move. I think that a lot of people do that, even in adulthood.
Yeah.
So moving through high school, how was high school compared to middle school? I don't know if I've ever talked to anyone who said middle school was a great time for them. I almost feel like if you're doing a lot in life as an adult, middle school was the time that prepared you for what life was really like. And the more you understood that then, the better you're doing now.
Yes. Yeah, that is the shared hardship and the expectation of defeat, you know.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. The reality that anything could happen.
yeah. Yeah, and that sticks with me today. I mean, going back to the Pope thing, I know if I put my name in, I'm probably not gonna win, but I'm okay with that. I've lost other things, along the way.
Yeah.
To
Well, I like kind of like like, if you shoot for the moon, you're going to hit the stars,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
which,
Yeah.
yeah.
So high school was an interesting time. It was that bad habit I've gotten into of not studying
Mm-hmm.
kind of bit me, right?
Mm,
Because I'm like, I don't need to study. I know all this. And then I started running out of the stuff I knew.
caught up to you.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I wasn't well versed on I didn't have good study practices. I didn't really understand a lot. And then of course that level that my father set is like that's unachievable.
Well, the level you set was unachievable by all standards,
Yeah.
except for one if you're born Catholic, right? I thought about that earlier when you were saying it because you actually I don't know if this is how you said it, but it felt like I was trying to be pope, so everything else is just kind of almost as good. Is that how it felt?
No, it was it's more of a tongue-in-cheek way of looking at success
Mm,
of if you really want to be successful, you need to be God's right-hand man on the planet. Anything less than that, you really didn't succeed, is what we're told.
mhm.
So it's
Yeah.
like find your own level of achievement, find your own success.
Mm.
And that's kind of what I came out with it. Only one person can be Pope, and it's not going to be me.
I'm glad we're here to be with you when we kind of look at the reality of that. So you ran into some issues with academics, and how did that affect your prospects then moving out of high school?
Um, I didn't have good grades, and I remember meeting my counselor. And meeting a counselor at school is different than was meeting a counselor in the late 70s, early 80s.
Oh yeah.
And I went in, I sat down, he looked at my thing, he said, "Well, you don't have the grades to go to college.
Mm.
There's really nothing I can do for you." And that was my
Wow.
counseling experience.
Not our proudest moment as school counselors.
But that's how that was everybody's experience, right? I mean,
Hmm.
unless you were the top 10%, then there was a lot of interest in helping you make the right decisions to get into what would help you in your later life.
Hmm.
So I looked at that and I'm like, okay. Um, and I think a pivotal moment was my father came in on my 16th birthday, woke me up, said, "Hey, get up, son. Congratulations, it's your 16th birthday." Now, back in the UK, when you turn 16, that is your life diverts at that point.
Okay.
You
That's like a rite of passage time.
Yes, well, you take your A level and B level test at school, and if you score on the A levels, you go to college and university. If you don't, you go into trade school,
Okay.
and there's no jumping the line. Once you're on the trade school track, that's where you're going. So, he came in, woke me up, said, your mother's fixed you a wonderful breakfast. I want you to go out and don't come back till you have a job.
Whoa.
He meant it. It was-
Okay.
And so I got up and I went out and I came back with 2 jobs. And so,
That day?
yeah,
Okay.
I had to give
Impressive.
a cab, right?
Yeah.
And so I had a job in the morning before school. I worked at a gas station.
Okay.
And then in the afternoon, I worked at a different gas station because the labor laws, you couldn't only work so many hours a week.
Mm-hmm. And was your dad proud?
Yeah, very happy on your way.
Mm-hmm.
But what that meant was I didn't have time for homework.
Mm,
I wasn't getting enough sleep. It really did not do me any service doing that.
mm-hmm.
I'm getting gas station wages. Come on.
Right.
Oh, but yeah, that didn't set me on the right track. I should have been at home studying. I should have been doing stuff. And that's like one of my woulda, coulda, shouldas. There's not a lot I have in life, but that's really one of them.
I feel like bad grades, 2 jobs, and a Pontiac GTO are like at that point you just become James Dean or like the all-American bad boy. Did you start wearing like black leather jackets?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a bad boy.
Okay. Some cigarettes rolled up in your sleeve and
Yeah, yeah,
okay.
tough guy.
So
Oh,
where
yeah.
did that leave you? So you're out
So
cruising.
yeah, so I'm like, yeah, literally cruising. I did a lot of that activity, which was a great fun.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm like, well, what are my options to go forward? How can I make my life better? How can I make a positive impact in people's lives?
Mm-hmm.
I knew I was smart, even though my grades didn't show it.
Wait, what? So but you can't go from just all-American bad boy to how am I not, it sounds like you turned a corner and you're back to wanting to help again. I don't
Well, that was always
what
percolating in my head.
so nothing changed. It just kind of eventually just like I'm not doing what I wanted to do, so I got to make some changes.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
this is not a productive life.
Okay.
And looking around and seeing other people and going, I don't want to be doing this in 10 years. I don't
Right.
even want to be doing this in 10 months. And
That's good. I'm glad you had that realization.
yeah.
And where did that take you?
Well, at 21, and this was a whole new thing. And this is something I hearken back to, and there's a reason I'm sharing this story. At 21, there was a new thing coming in from MAD, the Mothers Against Drunk Driving,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a designated driver. So remember me being the bad boy tearing around town in my GT?
Yeah.
Okay, all
Yeah.
the cops knew me by name. It was not, there was some drawbacks to being that kid.
Yeah. 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 Okay.
Um, and so I was the driver that night and Memorial Day weekend. And so I loaded, we went to a party, everybody had a great time on the way back, dropped off the first 2 guys, and the third guy's like, dude, my mom's waiting up for me. Let's just park here and let me sober up a little bit before we go home.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. We pull over 2 blocks from his house and park. And then something that had afflicted me my entire life, which I never thought was a big deal, became an enormous deal. And that was sleepwalking.
Wow.
As a kid, I had always been a sleepwalker. And,
Okay.
it's 1 to 10, I was the 11, turn it up to 11. I would wake up in the car with it running sometimes. I would,
That's so dangerous.
yes, yes. I remember I made it when we lived in Australia. I went all the way to school and woke up at school with my pajamas poking out from under my uniform. I'm like, how did I even
Mm.
get here? So,
Wow. That's scary.
yeah, but I never really told anybody. I mean, my friends all knew I would do it. So, but if we went like camping or something, they'd always put the lightest sleeper in the tent.
Mm-hmm.
They could grab me. No, no, come on back, Graham. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But this night there was nobody to stop me, and I got up and I walked out, and I thought it was at my home, and I wasn't. I was at somebody else's house,
Mm.
and I walked around the side through their gate into their backyard, and I mean, Marlon, you met me. I'm a big guy,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. They probably were nervous, wondering what the heck's going on.
They were terrified. They just saw this big guy, coming back through the fence. They sicked the dog on me. Didn't make a difference. And I know this because there was a 911 recording that my dad had listened to. So the wife was on the phone and she heard so she's talking to the cops, and you can hear the siren coming. But the man wasn't as reacting like she was. He panicked and pulled out a gun and shot me. And
Oh.
Wow.
he shot me again, and then he shot me a third time. And then the cop pulls up and says, "Stop." And he says, I think it's a burglar." And the cop goes, "That's Graham.
So he knew you.
I babysat his kids."
How, oh, this is tragic.
I woke up 3 weeks later, and I'd gone to sleep in my car, and I woke up in the hospital, and I was in really, really bad shape. And first one went through my shoulder, second one knocked me down, second one hit my belt, came up, broke all my ribs on that left side, and then just fragmented. That one's still in me. And then the third one came through my right side and broke some more ribs and went out the back. And yeah.
I
So
can't believe, I mean, it's what a miracle that you're here talking to
okay.
us now.
Yeah. Yeah. And they gave my parents, they said he's got like a 10% chance of making it. He's in bad. Luckily he's fit and
Hmm.
yeah, but he's in bad shape. And then, a miracle. The guy they wheeled me in front of was a MASH surgeon who had just returned from Vietnam.
Hmm.
And what did he treat all the time? Bullet wounds.
Sure.
Of all the guys to land on the plate in front of, that was the
Hmm.
guy to land in front of. And he patched me up, and I was in the hospital for 9 months and kind of came out. There's a lot of time to sit there and think. And that's
Hmm.
when I stopped the woulda, coulda, shouldas
Hmm.
because it happened.
Yeah.
Nothing I could do to change it. I learned who my friends were. I learned who my acquaintances were, and I learned who didn't really care.
Hmm. Yeah, that'll do it.
Yep. So it shook up my life, and I know my family was there the entire time. So I knew who I could trust on always.
Hmm.
And I've got some close friends that are still, I mean, we're as tight as my brother because they were there for me at that time and helped me through it. So I came out of that, and it's like, well, you're supposed to be here and do something good, Graham.
Hmm. So you had the realization that you've been kept alive,
Yeah,
and now you have the opportunity to make it all worth it, or make it, you know,
exactly.
make an impact.
Yeah. Funny things how they, work. The first day I met my future wife was the day I came out, and they took me back to this youth group I used to go to and wheeled me in. And she's like, what are they making a fuss about? Who's this guy? And I looked awful. You know, I,
Yeah.
I've been in the hospital for months and months and months. And so she's like, who's this guy? And yeah.
Well,
So,
you got her attention, Graham, and that's the first step,
right.
I think.
That's right. I do not recommend that as a way to get people's attention.
Wow.
It worked
S-
out. It worked out okay for me. And so, one of the things that I really kind of learned coming out of that whole experience was that, you know, s- like the military, they have the advantage on us. So if I'd been in the military, if I'd gone in the Marine Corps, you would see, ribbons on my chest that say he was here, he served he was in Ghana, he was in Nigeria, he was in these different places in life. He experienced this. Maybe he has a Purple Heart, right? We don't have those as civilians.
right.
And I've heard that the reason that soldiers wear their medals on the left is because death approaches from the left, and you're warning it's about to face a warrior.
Wow. I
And I'm
didn't know that.
and I'm like, yeah, I have fought my way back several times from things that I should have died, and I didn't. And it's just given me this mentality of when I face an issue, a crisis or something, am I dead? Nope. I'm halfway through the problem.
Mm,
Am I injured? Nope. I'm three-quarters of the way through the problem. And just by having that, like that Pope thing,
sure.
if that's my ultimate goal, my goal is to live, right?
Right.
If I've come out of it alive, I'm way ahead, right?
So that changes your whole perspective. I think
Yeah.
uh, I was just talking to someone else about this, and I think when you go through incredibly difficult circumstances, people tend to go one way or the other. they tend to become that warrior, that fighter, or they tend to sort of disappear or give up. But you have chosen and continue to choose to fight and to do good and to impact the world. And I'd love to talk about just kind of how that looks now.
Yeah. So as you know, the big change came when I lost my son Colin. So he was 15 years old, struggling with depression, and in he's on medication. He's talking to the therapist. All the things as a parent you think you're doing right,
Mm-hmm.
and then we lost him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the kind of the biggest thing my wife says about that day is that when they carried him away, I grabbed her and said, "I'm not going to let this break us," and just held on. And she said, "That's when I knew I'd be okay."
Mm. It's almost like all those things before this had prepared you for what's most people's worst nightmare.
Yeah. And I felt I had an unfair advantage over her on dealing with this loss because I had had all that time lying in that hospital bed,
Mhm.
realizing you can woulda, coulda, shoulda, all you want. And she still to this day will say, "I wish I'd done that.
Mm.
I wish I'd, we had said this or something different."
Mm-hmm.
And I just won't go down that rabbit hole because I know there's nothing down there that's any good. And sometimes, you need to get kicked in the head a couple times before the message sinks in. Because after that, my career changed. I worked for a Fortune 500 company in high-end corporate sales. And couple days after losing Colin, I got calls from my customers saying, "Hey, what's going on? We heard we got a new sales rep." So the other guys in the office were poaching my accounts, figuring I'd be out for a while. And I'm just like,
Mm.
I don't think I want to be in that snake pit anymore. My
Wow.
friend gave me a job where putting we're running the operations department. They put Motorola radios in police cars and
Mm-hmm.
in police cars. Other than my old GTO, I hadn't really worked on cars, but I knew how to oversee people.
Mm-hmm.
And after about 11 months there, the receptionist took her life. And
Oh.
okay, I am not supposed to be stop horsing around and do what you're supposed to do. And your whole life you've been saying you're supposed to do good, get out there and do good. And so some parents from the high school had called to say, how was it after you lost Colin?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, not good. I go, worse than that though was the middle school where his little sister was.
Mm.
The school psychologist and therapist had gone into all her classes and told her friends and classmates and the teachers, whatever you do, don't talk about Colin to Nicole. So what these middle school kids heard was, don't talk to Nicole.
Oh.
And so when she stepped on campus, nobody would make eye contact with her. Even her friends weren't talking to her.
Mm-hmm.
And, nobody really likes the helicopter parent. And I used to say I turned into helicopter gunship, but I wasn't knocking down other people. It was a medevac. I came in and grabbed her and took her out of there and just said, this is so wrong what's going on here. And then I started looking around and peeling back the onion and go, what are we doing in our schools? How are we helping our kids?
Mm-hmm.
These two other parents, we came together, one with a daughter with severe depression. She'd been out of school for 6 months, and another one with a daughter that had a leukemia through middle school and was now trying to reintegrate back into the high school.
And they reached out to you?
Yeah. And so we got together and we made our list of complaints about, how things are. And then we said, okay, we need to pick three of these that we can actually affect a positive change on. And we went around, toured other schools in the area, especially the same socioeconomic status as our community to see what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And they all had wellness centers.
Mm.
And that was like a completely foreign term over the hill from the city.
Mm-hmm.
So we're like, well, these are what they are, but we went back to the school district with not just a problem, but a solution.
When you saw the wellness centers, what was that like to go in and kind of experience that?
was really it was really heartening because you could see that other people had taken their time and effort and strategies and said, how am I going to make this work? How am I going to help these young people who really don't have a voice on getting, funding and rooms in buildings and structure and union job descriptions and all that stuff to get people in to help them. And it was just inspiring to see that hundreds of people, aren't getting recognition.
Hmm.
It's not like the Betsy Ross Wellness Center. There's no name on it, but they have worked themselves through this whole system to get these resources there for the kids. So it was like, wow, look what this jewel that's here. Let's take it across and put it in our schools too.
Hmm. And the wellness centers, when you saw them, did they have? Sometimes we see wellness centers, but the funding's run out and there's no people in them. But these wellness centers that you saw, they had therapists or counselors in there.
They vary, it's like, what does a horse look like? Could be a Clydesdale, could be a Shetland.
Sure.
It is like kind of the originators was San Francisco School District.
Hmm.
So theirs was a health and wellness center. You could get your teeth done. They had reproductive service, all that kind of stuff was
Hmm.
going on there.
It's
But
kind of
just
like a mini hospital.
exactly, yeah,
Mm.
providing it for students who ordinarily wouldn't have access to it.
Mhm,
But the ones that we were looking at we were focused on mental health.
mhm,
And so the typical structure was they would have some interns, one or two licensed people, and then like the school psychiatrist. And that was kind of the structure we saw.
sure,
These were different than the academic counselors.
sure.
And we got an exposure on how those two groups don't always get along.
Yeah, school psychologists and school counselors have, pretty different jobs for the most part, and then sometimes there's, like, any small city or organization, there's politics involved, and
Yeah.
people see things as their job or not their job, and
Mhm.
yeah, I would say that's typical, but I've also seen a lot of, you know, organizations that trust each other and do a lot of great work and at incredible speed. So, yeah, it varies.
Yeah. So our local district was phenomenal. They budgeted a little over $1.2 million to put these wellness centers in. And, that is the parents are going to come back. Why are you spending money on this?
Mm,
My child doesn't need to go there. So there's that pushback or
mm,
from educators where this is just somewhere where someone can hide out instead of taking their test.
mm.
There's all those pushbacks, some vocal, some kind of, subtle. But they weathered it. They did it in a nice, well thought out way. They just spent 2 years of letting people know what a wellness center was going to be.
Sure, because I guess it's possible that it could just be somewhere to hide out and not take tests if you're not paying attention or being careful to make sure that people are utilizing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were fortunate and they were, like I said, very receptive at the district level.
Hmm.
We put these wellness centers in and they have an intake specialist, someone who's just kind of like, do you need 10 minutes to calm down? You break up with your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, mom didn't let you buy the shoes you wanted. Uh, these are real
I
crises.
would have been in there every day. I was always at Big Five getting some kind of off-brand
Yeah.
shoe. But yeah, go
Mom,
go
these are
ahead.
not Adidas. What,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Man.
so that too, hey, this is someone we need to make an appointment for, come back and
Mhm.
talk. Or this is someone in real crisis and we need to immediately deal with it.
A little bit of a triage.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was that like, Graham? Were you the person put in the position of responding to a parent who says, "My kid doesn't need this," or an educator that says, "Hey, this is a school, not a hospital."
Yeah. And that's where that corporate sales training came in, anticipating the objections, addressing them beforehand,
Mm,
and a little bit of the shark of
mhm,
setting it up so that if they raise their head with that argument, you'd already nullified it, and they get, cut a little bit,
Yeah.
off.
Sure. Yeah,
Some
you
teeth.
want it, but you're using these tactics that are otherwise, a lot of times used in business to get ahead, but you're using them for the greater good.
I think. Yeah.
Where are we at now with the wellness centers? And I know your vision got even larger after that.
It did, yeah. So we got the wellness centers, and for anybody who's unclear of that, what that does is that just provides an on-campus place for someone to go. Level tier one, right?
Mhm.
The majority of the students, they just need somewhere to go, and that way they don't leave campus. They school becomes a safe place for them. They're interacting with a trusted adult, which is a key to any kid's success, and they're not feeling alienated and alone. That's one of the people keep talking about COVID and kids being alone.
Mhm.
If we can get them on campus, part of the organization, part of the family, that's a great success. After our local school district, we went to a neighboring school district and got them to commit to put 30 wellness centers in, and kind of following the same template that we had said of triage, limiting the time. And schools are there for education, not for mental health. And that was the way I addressed the parent objection was we're just trying to stabilize them so that they can continue their education and not drop out of school.
Right, you're not trying to, dial down the learning and dial
Mm.
up the whatever coping skills all day or emotional learning or, I think, yeah, you're trying to balance them out so they can access the curriculum.
Yeah. And that's where that, my life experience of seeing the value of my father's education, how that helped him, my own struggles with education, how my
Mhm.
counseling experiences went when I could have used some help, when I was getting really severely bullied in middle school. And
Mhm.
then, so it's like helping these kids have a better education experience. And by that, a better life experience.
Mhm.
They're coming out of it not as damaged as a lot of people did in the past.
So you've taken your experience and really created a larger, vision for how you can make sure that people don't have to, do that again,
Yeah.
and you're meeting a need that went unmet for a long time.
Yes. And raising that voice, raising that community perspective. I'm and where I'm going with this is you'd mentioned it, I live in an affluent community. I lived an affluent life. I literally had a butler, servants, driver, all that stuff when I was a kid. People watch Downton Abbey and they're like, "Oh, what was it like that?" I'm like, I can tell you what it's like living,
Love
Um,
it. How, real quick, I know we don't have a ton of time, but there's gonna be some fans out there who wanna know how similar your butler was to Mr. Carson.
okay, he was Ghanaian
Okay, so right
or
away, we're
shorts.
we're not off to a great start here. Mr. Carson, did he sound like that?
No, but well, he did have a deep voice. And everybody, when he snapped his fingers, and that was how he got people's attention, he would just snap his fingers, everybody jumped. So
Like the rest of the people who worked in your home?
yes, the drivers, the nannies, the cooks, all those people. If it was a snap of the finger, and everybody stopped what they were doing, stood tall.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Um, alright, so it wasn't quite Highclere Castle,
No, no,
but
it was a nice estate.
yeah, yeah. That's incredible. Okay, well, I think we need to have a whole different show about that, Graham, because I think people are gonna be interested. But bringing it back to another sort of statewide initiative that I know that you have been working on for quite some time, and I think it's, really incredible and always love getting updates from you, and that is on the license plate. Tell us about
Uh-huh.
that.
Yes. So, um, my business partner Gail and I realized that we shouldn't be just providing these to affluent students. We need to go and get it into these other school districts. I know, Wellness Together, you started out, doing work in like Oakland and stuff, places historically underserved.
Mhm.
And so we really wanted to address that. And Gail is African American woman growing up in Richmond. She
Mm.
brings a different perspective than I have as an immigrant, and all the life story I've been sharing.
Mhm.
So we put those together and like, how are we going to get this? How are we going to change it? So do you remember
Mhm.
I talked about MAD?
Yeah, Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I met with Sandy Hook Promise,
Mm.
talked to one of the moms, and we were just sharing the grief of losing a child.
Mhm.
And I said, I really admire what you're doing. How did it go when you were with the president, with Obama?
Mhm.
You guys went to change law so that it was, background checks on people getting firearms. My history with firearms, you understand, I'm not a big fan.
Right.
So we just talked about that. And then one of the other people from Sandy Hook came back and said, that was a really great question that you had asked. And let me tell you what we learned was that we were going in to change culture by changing legislation. We wanted to do it
Mm.
top down.
Mm.
And then he brought up MAD, who went about changing culture and the legislation followed.
Interesting.
So, like in California, it used to be 0.10 for drunk driving. Now it's 0.08.
Mhm.
That's because MAD had already started that designated drivers thing. And so the legislation followed them. So we took inspiration from them on we need to change culture and let the legislation kind of come after us. And so we looked at this. How do we get the message out? How do we make this something that people see every day? And we came up with a license plate idea. So we said, let's put a mental health awareness license plate on the back of 50,000 cars.
Mhm.
And that's going to start a conversation. And so we had our tagline, which is let's bring mental health into the light, even if it's just a traffic light.
Mm.
Let's just, we just envision somebody pulling up and seeing that license plate going, what is that? Oh, wow, mental health. Boy, your Aunt Mabel, she really struggled with mental. Just starting that conversation
Mhm.
is kind of the goal. So then we said, well, how do we get a license plate?
So what are we hoping for, and when do you think we might see this plate? Because I'm going to get one.
I know you are.
I
I,
already have a tiny one that I put on my suit
oh,
like a
yeah.
pin, but now I want to get a real one.
They think in 10 to 12 months, we'll be through the application process and those plates will be um, reviewed by the CHP.
That's great. And so we could be really spurring on some, and like, did you notice how now that you've had all the success, I said we?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
Well,
So now we could
you've always been on board, though. You've
That's
always
true.
been a
That's true. I
supporter.
just I just wanted to be careful. I wasn't
Yeah.
getting in there, but so we could be spurring on some really important conversations all over California within a few years here about mental health and about wellness. And I love the idea of, like you said, like someone saying, "What is that?" That's not a Dodgers plate. What is that? And
Right.
so
Right.
how encouraging and how absolutely inspirational, because I do believe there are so many people supporting this initiative and just wellness in general, mental wellness in general,
Yeah.
throughout our state.
Yeah. And Hannah, I don't know if you had a chance to see it, but that is what the plate will look like.
We'll put a link to it too in the show
Well,
notes.
we ran a statewide contest for high school students to design that because we always, believe that no, nothing about us without us. They need to be that voice.
Hmm.
And we said we don't want somebody curled up in a ball. We don't want someone crying. It has to be cool and something you'd want to put on your car. So that they took the green ribbon for mental health, incorporated the state of California in
I
that.
love it.
Yeah.
So I think it's a cool looking plate.
Hannah is our resident cool person, so
Oh, excellent.
Oh, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, I actually did see it online, a photo of it, and I love it too. It's not too flashy, but it's flashy enough that it will get someone's attention and hopefully start that conversation.
Yeah, and you're right, and it was amazing to see, when we talk about the disparity in California on mental health support, on access to mental health, those designs we got ranged from full-on CAD,
Hmm.
art ready,
Hmm.
crayon,
Wow.
and
Those
you're like,
crayon ones must have been Pretty touching.
She came in number three. The crayon was the third number three vote.
Is there a place we could go see some of the top ones, Graham?
I don't have that posted. Maybe I should put that back up
Oh,
where,
I think it'd be totally
yeah,
interesting and cool.
yeah, some of those past designs on that. So Marlon, you can tell me about that painting?
Yeah, the painting behind me in my office, it's from my favorite movie, which is Good Will Hunting. And it's sort of from a really intense scene where the main character, Will Hunting, played by Matt Damon, asks psychologist Robin Williams, and I think Robin Williams' best role. Will kind of points out and zeroes in on a picture in Sean, the psychologist's office, and starts to ask him about it. And it became a way for Will to not divulge any personal information, for him to kind of hide from the entire process of therapy and opening up. And it got Robin Williams' character Sean very upset and angry because it was a painting that his late wife, who had died from cancer, had painted for him, and Will was sort of bringing it up and using it to distract from the self-disclosure that was about to happen. So, yep, I love it. It's actually why the Wellness Together boat is our logo,
Mhm.
and I love having that painting. I think it really says something about the process of therapy and what it takes to open up, and how resistant we can be to get to those real feelings that we have.
Yeah,
Thanks for asking about it.
you bet. It reminds me of that slogan, calm seas do not make good sailors.
That's
Mm.
I love that. I'm gonna get that too and put it up. So yeah.
We do need to experience some turmoil and stuff. And as I've shared a lot of my life experiences, a lot of it is traumatic. A lot of it is stuff that can get you down. And I think that positive, that optimism to make it through, um, is sometimes innate, but it's sometimes learned. It's you know what, life can be a struggle, and here's some skills, here's some things you can do to get around it, over it, like diverting when someone's asking you a painful question on that. But I think that overall, just us talking about what we're talking about today, about this helps, name your podcast.
Yeah. Graham, I have a final question that's just been kind of lingering. And I know before we started recording, you mentioned, oh, I've done some of these in the past. And I always think, oh, that was sad. But I didn't feel that. I feel like it's real. I feel like that's what it is. It's real and it's vulnerable. But also, I feel like your story is so full of inspiration, truly. And we focused on success a lot in the beginning of the conversation. And I just want to ask you, do you feel successful?
I do. I feel successful. I feel like every day I'm making a difference. And the paycheck is, I do a lot of public stuff. And every now and again, someone will grab me and pull me aside and they'll say, you know what? There's a wellness center at this school.
Mm.
And I know you helped put that in. And I wouldn't be here if that wasn't there. And I'm like, that's my paycheck for the week. That's my paycheck for the year, right? That somebody has shared, I'm here because something you did helped and made a difference. So I feel successful. I wake up every day glad to wake up. I wake up every day knowing that I am making a difference.
What's your most powerful coping skill, Graham, when you do get down? What helps you the most?
You're gonna love this. It's playing the bagpipes.
I this is the first time in history I'm stunned.
Yeah.
I did not see that coming. I should have. I should have. With Scotland and,
You
being
are, yeah, you're forced to control your breathing, right? All
uh-huh.
tunes on the bagpipe are memorized. You don't read music, you have to memorize them. So your brain's going, and they are so loud, you can't think of anything else. Now, that makes me feel good. It may not make my neighbors feel good, but I feel
When you're playing the bagpipes, are you getting fully dressed up? I didn't realize because London's in southern UK,
Yeah.
and the bagpipes are more of a northern thing, if I'm not mistaken. So how did that happen?
My family is descendant Clan Sutherland,
Mm-hmm.
and they left Scotland a little over 450 years ago,
Mm.
traveled the world in they're in the British Army, and there's fun things that come up in your family history, like my a relative was in the regiment that burned down the White House in the War of 1812. Um,
Wow.
we've been
Okay.
going around the world causing all kinds of trouble, but yeah, so it's been in the background, and my father moving all the time, even though we'd go back to England, people would say, "Where are you from?"
Mm-hmm.
I didn't speak like someone from England. So I've always had an accent, always been hard to pin down,
Mm-hmm.
where are you from? What do you do?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that's where that bagpipes come from, and I love it.
I'm so glad we were able to end on this. That's certainly, Graham, by far the most interesting and unexpected coping skill, and for reasons too that totally make sense with the breathing. And it looks difficult. I saw someone playing the bagpipes just about 6 months ago. My wife and I were out, and there was a beach nearby, but there was a golf course nearby, and
Like
the
Half Moon
guy
Bay
was
or something.
it was Half Moon Bay.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, and I saw the person who was playing them. It sounds sort of calm, and like they're not really doing that much, or probably using their pressure from their arm. The guy looked like he had been working out for an hour straight.
yeah,
It looked like a lot of work.
yeah.
Yeah.
There is work on that, and that's why the tunes are so short. You know?
That well, it was beautiful, and just, I know you didn't commit to this, but I am gonna try to get you on record as saying you will provide at least a picture of you doing your favorite coping skill.
Very good. I certainly will. You got
Okay,
it.
we're gonna link that in the show
Yeah.
notes, and I can't wait to see it. You might
Okay.
see that behind me next to this other picture in the next time we meet.
I'll put on my kilt and everything so you got the
Oh,
flavor.
but what clan was it again?
Sutherland.
Sutherland clan, Graham Wiseman. You heard it here. And Graham, your whole story is incredibly inspirational. It's one of, like you said, stormy seas in a lot of places, but it has made you into who you are today. And it's hard to say, and it's very sad because so many of the things that my heart goes out to you, and each thing that you mentioned that was a challenge was like, oh my goodness, I just wanted to sit and validate and tell you how sorry I was, but you have taken each of those things and continue to make other people's lives better. And we love that. I think we're all inspired. I hope you come back and talk to us again soon. We'll certainly do another show to check in with you on the license plate.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Marlon. I've really enjoyed this, Hannah. Thank you so much. And I just love what you guys do at Wellness Together, and I love these podcasts.
Welcome back to Marlon Helps, or at least tries. We're going strong, week 2. This is our Q&A segment where I'm asking Marlon questions, Marlon is answering the questions, and we would love to hear any questions that you might have. So feel free to send them our way on Instagram at This Helps Podcast, and we might feature one of yours in an upcoming episode. So this week, I had this thought actually as I was driving to work recently, and this is a topic that we touched on in our recent episode with Gabe, and you also talked about it with Sarah Rice on This Changes Everything. And I wanted to talk about fear, in particular FOMO. I was hoping you
Mm.
can start by telling us what it is and then why it happens.
Well, humans haven't changed very much in the past 10,000 years. And there's something kind of baked into our evolution and our brain that tells us that unless people like us, we might die. And that was true back when people needed a lot more protection from wild animals that wanted to eat them or needed to find clean water, which in a lot of places people still do need to find clean water. And in a lot of places, a lot of this stuff is still ingrained and really helpful because life varies and cultures vary. But in a culture like ours here in the United States, for the most part, you have access to these things that you need. You have access to hopefully a safe place, but you still have that thought and that feeling that if people don't like you and don't invite you to things and they're all part of a group and you're not part of the group or you're part of an out group that they don't like, then it could jeopardize your literal existence. And it's hard to shake that feeling. So I think a lot of what has happened with, for example, the front facing camera or just a phone camera in general, and being so accessible and us seeing all the best parts of people looking like they're coming together, having a great time, helping each other, experiencing these high mountaintop moments, and you not being there, it for us it triggers something in us to that sort of says, "Hey, if you're not there and something goes down, um, they're all going to take care of each other, and I'll be here at home by myself."
Hmm.
That's what I think fear of missing out is. And that's where I think it comes from. And unfortunately, combo of being able to provide a product or an experience that really triggers that fear in us as human beings is extremely profitable. So if you want to find out what other people are doing without you, you're going to have to look at some ads. And unfortunately, it also gives us the feeling that we're sort of part of the group, just enough to have the fear of missing out because we're seeing what's happening. So you have some information. Well, at least I know this. And you kind of settle for the knowledge of a good time, the knowledge of an intimate connection or a meaningful relationship, and never get around to experiencing it, which is why I believe we're in the situation we're in with our youth mental health crisis.
Hmm. That was a lot of very, very helpful information. I've heard the really just like primitive explanation for FOMO in the past, and it makes a lot of sense when you think about it that way. But it is so difficult when you're experiencing it because the feeling is very real.
It's a real feeling. It's real anxiety. This is an anxious
Yeah.
generation that's experiencing real anxiety. And at some level, it still is helpful for us because we are made or created or evolved to go together. Our life really does not have much meaning if it's just us. And things start to go very wrong for our mental health and oftentimes our behavior when we don't feel connected to the people around us.
So for someone who, which really I think is everyone, I think most people feel FOMO. But
Hmm.
for someone who is experiencing it and has the knowledge of where it's coming from and wants to work on it, work on overcoming it, what's a first step that you could recommend?
If you have FOMO, that, like you said, means you're normal. Everybody has it, and it's kept us alive for thousands of years. All FOMO is, and a lot of times what pain is a message telling us that there is a need that we have that we need to pay attention to. And it would be very helpful for us if we listened to that sort of a noise you can't not hear. That's what anxiety is. That's what pain is. It's a message that tells us, wow, okay, maybe if I feel this way, the answer is not to continue watching my favorite show by myself and just order food, but maybe I can and should and would feel better if I was to call someone and ask them how they're doing. Be that friend that you want or that you need. Don't separate that genuine longing, that totally normal and valid desire to have a close relationship in real time with someone else, don't mistake that for, in my case, Haagen-Dazs or some delicious food. It's really not what you need during that time. What you need is to call and tend to and put some time and effort into getting to know the people around you, being that friend, and allowing people that you trust to be that friend for you. Hashtag TS. That was me trying. Thanks for joining us today. We hope it helped. Stay connected with us at thishelpspodcast.com.